This is the June 17th, 2018 meeting of the Concord City Planning Board. Madam,
It's January.
January 17th. That's what I said, didn't I?
You said June.
Did I really? Oh, it's going to be a long night.
No.
All right, so let's call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Certainly. Chairman Woodfin.
Here.
Vice Chair Foss.
Here.
Councilor Champlin.
Here.
Member Smithmeyer.
Here.
Member Fox. Member Hicks.
Here.
Member Regan.
Here.
Member Rosenberger.
Here.
Okay, we'll seat David when he comes. If he comes, go from there. Item 3 on our agenda is to approve the November special meeting minutes and the December meeting minutes as presented in your packet. Anybody have any questions regarding that? Or we'll entertain a motion to approve those?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. We have a couple of announcements on items that have been pulled off of tonight's agenda. If you're here regarding item 6B, which is the 2 Pillsbury Street minor subdivision noticed for public hearing, the applicant has requested that be postponed to the February 21st, 2018 Planning Board meeting. For that, we're not going to renotice it, so we do need to make a motion to grant that extension on that. If somebody would like to make a motion.
Moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries, and item 6D on our agenda will also be pulled off at the applicant's request, which is the item 6D is 117 Manchester Street. The applicant has requested to postpone due to alternative proposals. I know they were working with ADR, and there's a few things that they were working on. So no specific date's been requested on that. So we're going to take a motion to grant that extension with no date certain, which means they will have to renotice abutters.
So moved.
That motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. So anybody in the audience that's interested in those two items, we will not be hearing those tonight. We'll move on to item 5, design review applications by consent. Madam Clerk, do you want to read in? We're going to remove item 5D and C from this. Is that right? I'm going to remove 5C as well. So we'll do that separately from the consent agenda. Okay, so could we read those into the record, if you could, A through D?
Would you like me to read C and D also?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Item 5A is sports clips. On behalf of Joseph Concord New Hampshire Trust, requesting ADR approval to install a new wall sign at 7577 Fort Eddy Road in the Gateway Performance District. Item 5B is the Smoking Turtle Smoke Shop. On behalf of Evangelos Lilios, requesting ADR approval to install a new projecting sign at 9 Pleasant Street Extension in the Central Business Performance District. Item 5C is MHF Design Consultants Incorporated on behalf of Petrogas Group of New England, requesting ADR approval to replace 4 internally illuminated signs, including a new canopy sign, a new wall sign, and new panels in 2 freestanding sign structures. And item 5D is MHF Design Consultants Incorporated on behalf of Petrogas Group of New England, requesting ADR approval for exterior building modifications, including a 379 square foot addition for a walk-in cooler, a 267 square foot building addition, and modifications of the building facade at 417 South Main Street in the General Commercial District.
So were those requested to be pulled from consent, 5D? Did someone request that?
I think you wanted to hear them in the public hearing because it was architectural design review.
I did, okay. So that was my call, so we'll pull 5C as well and treat those together since they're the same applicant. So anybody in the audience wish to address item 5A, which is sports clip, or 5B, which is the Smoking Turtle Smoke Shop? If you could let us be known, that would be great. No, so we'll address those in consent, which means we'll take those 2 items as a whole. Any member of the audience wish, or the board wish to pull one of those items off of consent? Granted, there's only 2, but if not, we'll take a motion to accept item 5A and 5B on consent.
So moved.
Second.
That motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. That brings us to 5C, which is MHF Design Consultants. Is the applicant here? Come on out.
Good evening, Nicole Duquette with MHF Design Consultants.
Can you sign in on the sign-in sheet? right
Sure.
away? There's a computer there as well as.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah,
great.
you can access your project through the computer if you click on the link.
Excellent. I do have boards too, if that's easier. They're over there.
While she's writing that, I'll.
Can you give us an update?
Sure, the ADR reviewed the facade and the site and the signs, and they had no issue. They were fine with it.
Okay.
Now, would you like me to go through the whole
If you could, just
plan?
give us a
Okay.
quick overview, that would be great.
Okay, I'll finish that afterwards. All right. The property is located at 417 South Main Street. It's the existing gas station that's kind of diagonal from the Irving and Bow. This is right on the city-town line there. There are several site constraints on the lot, just to mention. All right.
Scroll down. Thank you.
So
There you go.
I'll let
Hope
you
you
get
went
going.
past it.
I had pulled this off consent. I was at the ADR meeting. This is the small gas station at the top of the hill, right across from Dunkin' Donuts as you go down into Bow. And it has a pitched roof now.
Thank you for
They're gonna basically raise the
just
roof,
on it.
make it a flat roof. And in your drawings, you'll see elevations. They're gonna make it into a 7-Eleven. They're gonna extend one little small pad. It's a very tight site. There was some concerns about trees in the back. There was some concerns about the awful-looking Unitil substation that's in the back. So it was enough that I didn't feel we should just do it on consent. I just wanted to have a little bit of a pitch here in case any other questions came up. I don't think there's questions about the sign per se, so I don't know if anybody has any questions about that. I think it was a Gulf station before, and it's going to be an Apple something.
Apple Green.
Apple Green.
Thank
Apple Green now.
Doing my presentation for me.
Yeah, and I think there was a question on the easement, right? Were we cutting into the easement at all on the new pad? Or am I
Yes,
remembering that wrong?
We are working with Unitil. One of the site constraints is the easement. The easement, I don't know if you can see my cursor. Right now, the easement comes along the back of the building and down. So basically, all of this land in here is Unitil easements, or Concord Electric was the previous holder of the easement. We are working with Unitil right now and have been even before we came to submitted the plans to the planning department. The existing easements don't mimic what's out there today. However, because it's such a long, drawn-out process to have them redone, we are working on oh, excellent, thank you.
Just hit that light too.
We are working on a joint use agreement with them to, I'm going to try not to hit you with this pointer, thank you, to allow a minor encroachment in that easement right there. Right now, we're encroaching in it. They're aware of that. We will be updating these easements in the future to mimic what's out there today as far as power lines go. The other constraint we have is the steep slopes around down this side of the property, down that side of the property. And as you mentioned, the substation is right there, and we have quite a slope down in that direction. So we are very limited to what we could actually do on this property to improve it. They are looking to increase the square footage of the store, the convenience store, and make it a better floor plan for them. One of the things that they'd like to do is, right now, there's an exterior exit to the bathrooms, and they're not exactly ADA compliant. So they are redoing the bathrooms, having an internal entrance to both of the bathrooms, and making an ADA compliant bathroom. That was very important for them. The other thing that they want to do is they want to add, I think it's a 390 square foot walk-in cooler. That cooler will be put on a concrete pad instead of having it as a building addition. Because of the slope considerations, we can do a lot more, we can construct it a lot easier and have less of an encroachment into the easement and by doing a concrete pad there than in a building addition.
So is that pad in the back, is that a gray portion in the back?
Yeah,
Right
it's
there.
right there. So we'd have a reveal in the back because of that back slope. We'd have a reveal on that concrete pad, and
And there's nothing there
frost wall.
now?
there's nothing there now. Oh, actually, take that back. There's mechanical units back there right now, I believe.
And those are going to be relocated to the roof?
Those will be relocated to the roof.
Okay.
Correct.
And on the right-hand side that's there now, so is that the existing
Right
right
there.
there? So that little jut out on the right-hand side, that's a low, if I'm looking at the elevations that I'm looking at here, the front elevation, it's a low elevation, or it's just a single story, and then there's the pitched roof that goes behind
That's-
it. You're gonna reface that whole thing so that little jut out looks like it's part of the store. Is that-
Right, this portion right here
No,
is that
over on the-
low roof.
Over on the right-hand side.
This
that
side
one.
right here, yeah, that is gonna be a solid face in the front. So
Okay.
you won't see an elevation change.
All the way out to that white, is that white pad, is that where the dump is gonna be?
Yeah, that's the dumpster. So right now, there's a dumpster where we have the building addition right there. There's a dumpster right there.
Okay.
So we're going to be just pushing the dumpster
Okay.
over to the right.
All right.
And that front elevation will be solid. And what they're doing, the architect is doing is building up walls along the, on both sides so that there is no level change in the elevation.
Okay.
The other thing that we're doing to the site is we're redoing the concrete sidewalk in the front. Concrete side it's beat up. Parking space is not exactly ADA compliant as far as slopes go. So we're regrading, we're tearing up the pavement in this section in here and regrading the pavement so that we have an ADA compliant parking space. And we're increasing the sidewalk along the front here to 7 feet so that we can, there's a cage in front, a propane cage in front, and we want to make sure we have ADA access on, and that 3-foot clearance in front of the cage.
So if I remember right from ADR, you're gonna regrade most of the front of the parking area. I know right where it meets the street, it's a fairly steep incline where it goes down to the street and then kind of bounces up. So is any of that incline coming out, or you're just gonna regrade to fix the front ADA compliance as far as the level of the slope?
We're regrading to fix the ADA
Okay.
compliant. If I brought that slope all the way up, sorry, I'm trying to find my grading plan. If I brought that slope all the way to the front of the store, it would make my ADA compliant
Yep, that's fine.
space even less ADA compliant.
That's fine.
Yeah. So the other thing we did is we added 2 parking spaces because of the increase in building square footage, including the walk-in coolers. We added 2 parking spaces over to the side over here. 2 compact parking spaces there to make the parking space count compliant with the regulations. We are also trying to add some more landscaping to the site. There's basically, the landscaping consists of bark mulch islands with nothing in them as far as I can see, except for this front island in here. There's 4 shrubs in the front that have just they're overgrown, so they need to be trimmed back. Over in these pockets here, adding some azaleas and daylilies, and around the freestanding sign back here, we're doing the same with the daylilies and the azaleas. The other thing we did, this parking space right here, we just switched the direction of the parking space. It's not a very safe parking space when the truck comes around and does its deliveries of fuel or deliveries to the convenience store. And that is typically that is the loading area right there too. So we just switched the orientation of that parking space to make it a little safer. The other thing we're doing is we're adding wheel stops in front of the store. The sidewalk to the building, grade between...
It's pretty tough.
It's tough, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it becomes a tripping hazard too, because it's less than the 4-inch reveal. So we do have more than the 4-inch reveal in this area, but over here, where we can't really do anything about the grade, we've made the sidewalk flush there and just put bollards in the front so that it's no more of not a tripping hazard anymore. I believe.
And I don't want to make you go through the whole thing. I just
Okay.
wanted to give the chance to the board to hear the applicant and ask any questions that I might not have asked. Suzanne?
Yeah, so, I mean, there's quite an extensive amount of stuff that's happening on
Absolutely,
the site.
yeah.
That was not in the application, for,
Yes,
that we got for the sign.
Do you want me to-
Yes.
Excuse me. So this site, the building on this site is prior to our zoning ordinance, so we don't have a site plan on file for this project. Otherwise, this would be considered an amendment to an approved site plan. And what the work that they're doing doesn't rise to triggering a minor site plan. So the pavement that they're adding doesn't exceed the threshold for minor site plan, and the amount of building that they're adding doesn't exceed the threshold for minor site plan. So it really only triggered architectural design review because of the facade changes to the building.
Well, it would have been nice in the application for them to at least show where it was in the context of where it is. I mean, because I was trying to figure out exactly where it was. I mean, you can't see, there was nothing in our application.
Oh, the physical location?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And showing like, okay, here's where the pylon is, and this is where, so there was, that would have been nice to review. But because it's in the performance district and there are these changes, can't we have them do the landscaping piece, or?
It's in there. Are you looking at C or D? It's all under 5D, that she just went
The
through.
Yeah,
application.
5D.
The application
Yeah,
is,
there's
I'm looking-
plans in there. There's, I have a narrative describing everything that I just went through too.
Of course, now I can't get back to
Yeah,
it.
5C is the sign packet, and 5D is the
it's in there.
architectural
Oh, okay.
building stuff.
So I
So
went
that-
through 5D. I didn't do the signage necessarily because I thought this is what you
We don't have a
wanted.
question. I didn't have a
Okay.
question on the signs. It's open
How do I
for
get
questions
back
if we had
onto
them. So,
my-
Carol, did you have a question? We'll come back to Suzanne, but did you have a question?
Okay, yes. On the sort of auxiliary parking way off to the north,
Left over there?
yes. What's the pedestrian access between there and the building? And is it clearly delineated and safe and all that good stuff?
They would have to go over the pavement, much like they do today. There is, scroll this up so, use the pointer. There are parking spaces right here, right now, that exist today. There's 2 parking spaces there. We would be fine with making those employee spaces if it's better. That's typically where the employees park anyways, just to have patron, customer spaces against the building.
That would make sense.
But your point's well taken. There's some way to get around safely through the site. Any other questions?
So I guess, can we have them update any of their, if there's any deficiencies in some of the site improvements because it's in the performance district?
So we talked to them about landscaping and at ADR about including more landscaping, and she was pointing out there really wasn't any space to add trees because of the slopes and the easements all the way around. And also, one of the ADR members pointed out that this site is surrounded by trees. It's like forested all the way around it.
In the back,
Yeah. So
but not around the parking?
correct, but I'm not sure if we would be. We talked about it sort of at length. I don't know if you want to go into the locations and.
Sure.
Well, they can, in that front area where they have the shrubs, they could put some trees.
Put a tree there.
Well, you don't want a tree obstructing the sign either out in the front.
You're talking about the landscape beds?
Yeah.
I mean, on the side, I think she's talking about the these over here.
Oh, yeah.
The ones where you have the azaleas and the
Right in here.
daylilies. No, to the left, I think. Yeah, those.
Well, I mean, I think
Sign's
that,
right here.
which is like, is that the one that's really, really tall?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we could,
I mean, there's landscaping around the Lowe's sign that hasn't
right, there's
obstructed the sign. I mean, there's stuff that you can do.
four
You could
bushes
put some-
there. I
Well,
mean, we
you
could
put a
probably.
It'd be nice if there were some trees around the asphalt parking area.
The slope does drop off there. I could probably fit like a crabapple tree, something that won't obstruct the site too much.
Well, I
in both
don't,
of
you know,
them.
tree doesn't really obstruct as much as you think it does.
Yeah, crabapple, actually, the canopy is gonna end up right where you don't want it.
Yeah, I think of like a
So if you put an
shade
actual
tree.
shade tree, that will grow up taller than your
This
sign.
one, I know that this one is going to be an issue for my client, to put anything too massive, because that is basically right in the line of sight of his building. And his tenant is going to have an issue, but I could possibly add something along this area and here. You come back with
Well, I guess you can work with staff, but I don't think a tree is gonna,
Yeah, I don't think one needs to be in the south bed, but if you could do something in the north side of it, if possible, we'll let you work with staff if it works out.
Yeah, as far as deficiencies on the site, that was the only thing that I
Right.
really saw was landscaping.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Staff have any questions? Any member of the audience have a question on this application? No? Okay, then we will look for a motion, if someone would like to make a motion as the item's been presented. So we're going to do 5C and 5D together. Can we do that?
Sure.
Or no? So if someone would like to make a motion on 5, sorry.
I'm trying to, I don't know, there may have been recommendations on the signs from ADR,
So
so
we
we
can
usually
make a
do the
motion
signs.
saying with any recommendations, subject to the recommendations at ADR. So if someone would like to make a motion to that effect on item 5C and 5D together.
So moved.
So that motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. You're all set.
Thank you.
You got that, Lisa? Subject to ADR, but I want to make sure.
Subject to
Dotting
recommendations
i's and
of
crossing
ADI.
t's. Okay, so that moves us on to our public hearing section for the night. Item 6, site plan subdivision conditional use permit applications. Yep, go ahead.
Item 6A is TF Bernier Incorporated on behalf of Betty Lou Nichols requesting minor subdivision approval for a 2-lot subdivision at 110 Lakeview Drive in the residential open space district.
Okay, we have a determination of completeness. What does staff find on this?
Determined to complete and open the public hearing.
All right, application's been been determined complete and recommended for open public hearing. We have a motion to accept that determination of completeness.
Move acceptance.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. We'll open the public hearing. And welcome to the table, Mr. Bernier, if you could state your name for the record.
My name is Tim Bernier with TF Bernier Incorporated. We are working with the Nichols family on the subdivision.
All right, tell us about your project.
I have PDF.
Everything is actually already set right to the agenda, unless you have new materials.
Yeah, well, it's on multiple sheets, so it's hard to see it, and so I combined it into a single. Can I?
Yes, plug right in.
Okay. So we get an update from staff on this application, if we could?
Sure, it's a pretty simple 2-lot subdivision. Last month, we dealt with the road discontinuance so that they'd have sufficient frontage on Lakeview Drive, and that was approved by council. So other than, they have several waivers, and staff supported all the waivers that they had requested.
Okay.
All right. So this property is located as frontage on Lakeview Drive, which is down here, and it has a little bit of frontage on Carter Hill Road up here. This is Nichols Farm, total 45 acres. Betty Nichols and her daughter Catherine are the applicants. And what they're proposing to do is subdivide off the house with 5 acres down here. This is the existing farmhouse. And that'll leave 40 acres up in here. We defined an area up in here for a building envelope to show that the lot meets zoning. So the 5-acre lot has 245 feet of frontage on Lakeview down here, and the 40-acre lot has 409 feet of frontage over here on Lakeview, as well as 161 feet of frontage up here on Carter Hill Road. Since the lots are so large, there's no state approvals that are required for the subdivision. We are asking for several waivers. The first group of waivers for things like existing topo, wetlands, associated wetland buffers, and test pit data due to the size of the lots. We topoed enough and did enough wetlands delineation around the 2 building envelopes to demonstrate that both lots meet zoning. But the rest of the lot is 40 acres, and so we're asking for a waiver not to do the topography and map all the wetlands for the remaining 40 acres. A stormwater management plan, stormwater calculations is another waiver request. That has a 45-acre lot. We're not proposing any development of significance. So we're asking for a waiver of that. And then we're also asking for a waiver of overhead utilities to allow overhead utilities for the existing house. This old farmhouse has been there forever. And we're not doing anything on Lakeview. So we'd like to keep that overhead. So we went through the staff report. We made all the revisions that were requested in the staff report. Been in contact with Betty's working tonight, couldn't be here, and her daughter Catherine's out of the state, so she couldn't be here either. But in talking to them, they we're all set with the conditions of approval with the exception of condition 4 of the list, which is relatively new. And discussing them, it's a request for easements on the existing culverts on Lakeview Drive. The proposal.
I'm sorry, just direct us to where, is this item 4 under 3.2?
It would be into the conditions of approval.
So item 4 is drainage easements shall be submitted and approved by the city solicitor, that one?
That one.
Okay.
Right. There's nothing about the subdivision that would necessitate these easements. The culverts are there. They've been there for over 60 years. There's no work proposed on Lakeview Drive. There's nothing new. The Nichols family has also had a pretty tough time in the city over the last few months. This application was submitted in October, so they're not feeling particularly philanthropic at this time to donate these easements. So they really would prefer not to have that as a condition of approval. And just for clarification, there's really 2 items. Item 1 of the conditions of approval. Within item 1, there are a request for the easement as well, so I'm not sure if that needs to be addressed if the board so desires. So the item 1 is address all of engineering comments, but within engineering comments is a request for the easements. So just to cover all our bases, we also have concerns with that. So other than that, we're everything has been.
Okay, well, let's tackle the number 4 then right out of the gate, because I don't see anything, and the board will pipe up here, but I don't see anything here other than that's going to raise a red flag. I do want to address underground utilities. So this on item F under 1.5F. Which is an easement not to bury the existing overhead utilities because the land's not being developed. Under the guise that if the land is developed, those lines will be buried at a future date.
Right, we're only requesting that waiver for the existing house.
Right, we're not giving it anything long-term, it's just for this particular property.
Right.
So let's address from staff, if we could get an update on item 4, which is that drainage easement shall be submitted and approved by the city solicitor. Pros and cons, take that out, leave it in. What you guys give me some thoughts.
Yeah, I'm a little confused because the response that we received included copies of the proposed drainage easements and the letter that we received from you, so this is the first we're hearing of it. I'm going to let Brian address it, but this is a new one that sprung on us since yesterday it was delivered to us, a copy of the drainage easement.
Okay, what does it cause for problems for the city?
Typically on
Pull that
cases,
mic a little closer, just bend it down.
yeah, typically in cases like this with existing culverts where we don't have easements, we try to get them through the subdivision or site plan process, because what it does is it sort of defines an area for the city to go do maintenance, and it also defines what the easement rights are for both the landowner and for the city, so it's clear to both parties. So it kind of cleans things up. In the past, there have been developments where they don't want to do the easements. We haven't pushed too hard in those cases. We still recommend that it be done. But because the culverts have been there, if there's an issue and we need to maintain them, we have a right to go maintain them sort of just prescriptively. It just doesn't provide a clean setup between both the landowner and the city. So we've gone both ways before. We do recommend that they do it, but if they don't want to, we're not going to worry too much about that.
Thoughts? Sorry, put you on the spot.
No, it's okay. I would defer to engineering on that, if that's been their habit in the past, that they have gone both ways, if they accepted it either way. I think planning is in support of what they're comfortable with as an engineering issue. I would defer to Beth on
Let me ask a question. So I understand the cleanup aspect of it, and I'm sensitive to that, and I know that we want to get it up to snuff. And once you open the prospect up, you can put things in place. Since development's not being done in this area, do we punt on it for this particular time and wait if something happens at a later date and address it at that point?
I mean, if it was a case of they were putting a new culvert in or something, absolutely we'd want the easement, because it's it's been in there for years. We have sort of an underlying right to go in and maintain that. We just recommend to the landowner that they consider it so that it cleans things up. They know exactly what they're giving us for rights, and we know.
So does the landowner know that?
But just one correction, just so the board knows the truth. There is no prescriptive right. The ability of the city to go in there and maintain them is purely at the will of the landowner. They're on the Nichols property. Just like a landowner can earn prescriptive rights against municipality, municipality can't earn these rights against the landowner. It's an individual thing. And so it's not cleaning up anything. It's leaving it the way it was. It's been there for 67 years.
Okay.
They don't feel that what they're proposing is doing anything that would necessitate it.
If that item 4 is taken out, if that item 4, Brent, is taken out of this particular application, what does that do to item 1 that he addressed, which is address engineering review comments to the satisfaction? Does anything need to change? If that's taken out, I guess it doesn't need to change.
We would just, when we went back and re-reviewed when it came in, we'd strike that comment noting that they said they didn't want to do that.
Okay.
Easement, so.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Any member of the audience wish to address this application? Yep. Okay, so Tim, can you step back? Come on up. Hi, welcome.
Please sign in, please.
And one of you sign in, and then maybe you could give us your name for the record.
My name is Robert Harrison. We live at 44 Carter Hill Road. We're a direct abutter.
And my name is Melinda Harrison, and I live at 44 Carter Hill Road.
You two related?
No. So we're in opposition where they're not against the subdivision. I'm against where they want to put the driveway. And I'm not against the 40-foot piece. I'm just concerned of where they want to put the driveway. I want to put the driveway right in off a very sharp corner, very dangerous corner.
On Carter Hill Road.
On Carter
Okay,
Hill
so
Road.
give us a.
So I'm standing at my mailbox, taking a picture downhill.
South?
To right where they're gonna put where the signs are that you see, the illuminated signs from the city. That's right where they're gonna put the driveway.
A whole bunch of stuff there.
You have did I pass out the right, yeah.
There's some other material here, though.
Yeah,
That might be yours.
Oh,
I think it looks like similar material to what we have in our package.
It's part of the, it's just part of the,
Just look everything. Yeah, you were only supposed to get this, sorry.
Okay, you want that?
Thank you. Yes.
picture, Byron.
Yeah.
So that's my concern, is right where that's a very sharp corner, and the motorcycles, they just come ripping right up through there in the summertime, and it's a double S corner, and that's where they're really starting to gain momentum, right where they want to dump that driveway out.
Okay, staff, can you just tell me on the plans and the plans as part of our package where that curve is? Because I don't see anything that's,
It's right, it's right,
it's right there? Okay.
the curve's right here. I was taking the picture from right here where my mailbox is, but that's where that sharp corner is, and that's where they want to put the house. There's 40 acres, there's gotta be a better place to put a driveway than right there.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know.
I mean, you can tell me that there's all the site, give me all the mathematical equations for site distances and everything else, but when the motorcycles come through there, that's the second corner where they're really starting to come into third gear, and I mean, they're starting to come into it, and somebody's gonna get hurt.
Or killed.
Yeah.
It's a very busy road. Going to the mailbox is challenging.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy how fast people drive on that road. I mean, it's 40 acres, it's gotta be a better place.
Okay.
I mean, it's the easiest because it's the least cost effect, it's least costly, but it's the most dangerous place to put the,
Okay. Any questions of this applicant? Butter? Sorry, thank you. Any questions from the board? No? Questions from
so
staff?
we're a direct abutter, so I was taking that picture downhill.
Any other,
Right.
any other concerns with the plan as it's presented?
No, I mean, I think it's great, but it doesn't, this driveway does not belong there.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for your testimony. Any other member of the audience wish to address this application? No? Come on back up, Tim. Okay.
I can address the
Absolutely.
driveway issue.
Yep.
We measured the site distance. It's on the outside of the curve. The site distance exceeds the city's requirements for site distance. It's consistent with the lots that Mr. Harrison just subdivided on the same road. There's really not an issue there. There are plenty of driveways on there that there are an issue. There's an issue. There's a driveway directly across the street from here that's on the inside of the curve. They have very little sight distance. So if people are speeding on this road, it might be a good road to put some mechanisms to get people to slow down, because there are dozens of driveways on here that have inadequate sight distance, but this isn't one of them. So I would, if people
So
are
on that
speeding, we need to do something
On that
about it.
small area, that's, I mean, it looks to me anyways, that you'd only be coming out on the curve somewhere
Right.
fronting to that road.
Yeah, you got to come out somewhere. We picked the best spot, get the most sight distance, and we have quite a bit more than the minimum required by the city. It helps being on the back of a curve because your sight distance is measured over the asphalt. When you're on the inside of the curve, you're looking through the woods. So that's why the inside of a curved driveway is always the hardest to get sight distance on. You got snowbank issues, you got tree issues, you got sign issues, you got telephone pole issues. When you're on the back side of the curve, you immediately, within a few feet, you're on the asphalt of the road. So the snowbanks are plowed, there are no trees, and then you're just going.
So from the driveway, if you came out where you're proposing the driveway, can you see down the hill and in both directions?
Oh, absolutely. In greater distance than the minimum required by the city.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Sure. Come on back up. So we're presented with an issue that even though it is 40 acres, is the X amount of it is on the road.
I understand that, but they could also go down onto the other road and put the house in on that side.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, there is probably a calculation for site plan, for site distance and everything else, but I live there, so I know what's going on.
Yep.
As far as, and whatever happened years ago on the inside of the curve, we can't stop that. But I'm saying that we cannot, we can stop somebody getting hurt by not allowing the driveway to be put here.
Okay.
And maybe we could hire, if we wanted to get, Tim works for, Mrs. Nichols, but maybe we could get an independent person to write a report on it, really what they think.
You'd do that?
I don't, but maybe they, no. She's gonna hire her, you know what I mean?
Yep, yep. Okay, thank you. Okay, any comments from staff? Thoughts? Yeah, Suzanne?
Is that something that someone from engineering would look at, or?
What our requirements are 200 feet in each direction, and from what's shown on the plan and what we've seen out there, there is more than 200 feet of sight distance out there. So it meets our requirements for an acceptable driveway location.
Is like the crest of the hill, is that like more of an issue for the people coming out of the driveway?
It could be an issue depending if you put a driveway in a different location, like where the picture's located, that the crest of the hill sort of poses a problem for sight distance from that location, but when you're actually at the location where the proposed driveway is, you're more of at the crest of the hill, so you can see in both directions. So we don't have any, we do understand the speeds and other things out there, but as far as it meeting our requirements for where a driveway can be placed, it meets or exceeds the sight distance.
So you guys have gone out and looked at it?
Yes, we have.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments regarding the application?
Could I ask the applicant a
Yes.
question,
Yep.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep, absolutely.
Thanks, Mr. Bernier. So I'm looking at the aerial, the Google Maps shot of this. Should I assume that the reason you want is there future development planned on this lot?
No, this
That
is,
dictates where that driveway is going to be?
there's physical grade difficulties that there is an existing driveway there now because this is really the only access to the upper half of the 40 acres.
Okay.
So that's.
So it was like when it was working farm, that was the access. There's a
Correct.
break in the wall.
Yeah,
this is actually, and this line that you see on here is the actual tree line. This is a field.
Yep, I'm looking at the aerial, so I see that, yeah.
So, yeah, that's really their only access to the upper 20 acres of the 40. The purpose of this is they have really no intentions of further development. This is, Betty lives in the house. This has been in the family for a very long time. I think it was her great aunt lived in the house when the city moved the road over and they lost 780 feet of frontage.
We gave some of it back.
She grew up, Betty grew up in the house, Catherine grew up in the house, and the purpose of this, Catherine just got married and they were gonna build a house up here. So that was a purpose, and mother was gonna stay in the farmhouse, and Catherine and her husband were gonna build a house in the field.
So you are going to build a house in the field?
That was the plan. They're having some second thoughts now, but.
Let me just clarify something that you said. So my understanding is that the driveway already exists, or the access to the road already exists from the
Correct.
From the field.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
There's no, you couldn't drive a car in there, if that's what you mean.
Okay. But there is a
I drove my truck in there. That's where
a path or a farm
field-
pickup, yeah.
the field crew
So it's
drove
not a
it.
driveway, but it's a
No,
it's a path. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so we're going to close the public hearing. You could step back, Tim, thank you. Let's take a look at this back from our report. Shoot, keeps opening up this thing. Okay, so I want to address the easement issue first, if we can. Does anybody have an issue if we remove that requirement to provide drainage easements to be approved by the city solicitor? So if someone would like to make a motion to strike item 4, 3.2, item 4 to strike drainage easements from our agenda.
So moved.
Second.
That motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
And all those opposed? Sorry. That motion carries. So And with that, the notion that any references to that in the engineering review would also go away at the same time. And I'm conscious of the fact that we want to get it right, but I don't want to put the burden in this if there's not a development going into it. So regarding the, so regarding the driveway, any thoughts regarding the driveway? Any penchant to request a change there, or do we want to move forward? Suzanne?
Well, I think in light of the fact that engineering has been out and looked at it and said it fits within the regulations, that.
Okay. Okay, yep. Yes.
And, you know, I'm inclined to be sensitive to the concerns raised by the abutters. On the other hand, you know, since it may not be a driveway, but since it's already an access from the field to the road, that apparently has existed for a significant amount of time.
Right.
I don't feel that I can support requiring the applicant to build a new access point for that piece of property.
Okay. So that sounded like a motion to grant minor subdivision approval on item 3.2 under your agenda here for a two-lot subdivision at 110 Lakeview Drive, subject to the following precedent conditions and fulfilled within 1 year prior to endorsement of the final plan by the planning board chair and clerk, unless otherwise specified, or as Heather will tell me.
Sure. Do you want to do the waivers first?
Oh, yeah, let's do the waivers first. Thanks. Is that what you're going to tell me, Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Good job. I was paying attention.
You were paying attention.
Good job.
Okay, so we got a few waivers on our agenda here. So item 3.1 is to staff recommends that the board grant the following waivers requested from the SDR, and that is 12.083 and 15.034 for existing topography, to only show topography on the portion of the new lot. I'm not going to read those. The natural features only show natural features on the portion of the lot. The setbacks and buffers to only show the wetbacks, setbacks and areas of the field topographic survey. The septic system does not supply soil test pits, and stormwater design standards to not provide stormwater calculations and plans, and the underground utilities not to bury existing overhead wires serving Lot 11 off of Lakeview Drive. So if we'd like to make a motion to grant those waivers as outlined so eloquently there in 3.1.
So moved.
John.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. So 3.2, it brings us to 3.2 to grant the minor subdivision approval for the two-lot subdivision at 110 Lakeview Drive. Again, outlining items 1 through 3, 5 through 6, 7, and 8, with item 4 being struck. Would someone like to make a motion to grant that minor subdivision approval?
So moved.
That motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Okay, we're all set. Thank you for your testimony, folks. I know it's not what you wanted, but thank you very much for the thoughts. Okay, that brings us to our next item on the agenda, which is, I believe 6B was pulled from our agenda, 2 Pillsbury Street pulled from our agenda. Brings us to 6C, the Pennacook Assisted Living Major Site Plan. Let's get that into the record if we could.
6C is Ellen Moses on behalf of Pennacook Assisted Living Facility, requesting major site plan approval for a 2-story, 6,600 square foot addition to an existing building for 18 residential units and associated site improvements, and a condition permit to allow construction parking spaces that is required at 30 Borough Road in the medium-density residential and general commercial districts.
All right, welcome to the table. If you could tell us your name for the record.
Sure, thank you. My name is Mark McLeod with the H.L. Turner Group, here on behalf of Whitaker Place. And let me see if I can.
So let's have you sign in, and we'll get a quick update from staff if we could on this.
Sure.
If someone could give us a quick little overview of this project.
Sure, it's just for the expansion of the building. There's new parking spaces. They've shown they're going to build less spaces than are required for zoning,
Yep.
but we're okay with the proposed locations for future parking spaces. They can meet that requirement in the future. They've added additional outdoor walking space for residents, which is nice. But otherwise, we don't have any issues.
And there was no waivers or anything as part of this? There was a permit, there was a zoning issue regarding the length of the building, is that right?
Yep, and they received their variance to
Okay.
exceed the length of the building.
Okay. What is that? That seems silly, but there really is an ordinance in the city that says you can't have a building longer than X?
I think it's like 300 feet. Yeah.
160 feet.
360 feet?
No, 160.
160 feet.
Yeah.
And theirs is 300, I think, so.
See, you learn something new every day. There we go. Disappear? Okay, Mr. McLeod, if you could tell us about your project?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. The Whitaker Place is an assisted care residence at 30 Borough Road in Pennacook. This is the existing site plan that you have in front of you. They provide 54 existing units in this building there. It's an 8-acre lot, and what they're proposing to do is add on to that wing at the west end there. It's a 6,600 square foot addition. It's 2 stories, 9 units on each floor. So it will bring the total number of living units in this building up to 72. And we're really just taking that existing site that there is, we'll go back to that for a second, with the road that circles around the building and everything. We're really just kind of pushing that westward to allow for that addition and also additional parking spaces. We're adding 18 spaces to bring the total number on the site up to 59. There is as was mentioned, we're requesting a conditional use permit. Ordinance requires 72 spaces, 1 for each unit. There isn't that many now. We are providing enough new spaces, 1 for each new proposed unit. And as was mentioned, we are showing where those additional spaces could be provided if needed. Of those 59 spaces, 9 of them will be accessible, and in creating those, we're actually correcting a few of the accessible spaces that are there now don't comply with ADA regulations, so we're going to fix that, and so all the new spaces will be fully compliant. Site's already serviced by municipal water and sewer, natural gas. The only new utility we really need to add to that is we're extending a new sewer service line out of that addition and tying into the existing line on the lot. We're not going out into the street. You can see we're still maintaining a lot of the buffer. There's some pretty dense woods, some mature growth in there, and one of the benefits of this lot is it does have enough of a buffer there where even with this disturbance, we're still able to maintain a lot of that. It really doesn't change the view from the street. We're really moving westward, cutting into where those trees are. But what people see from Borough Road really won't change. You won't really notice it until you drove up into the site there. And one thing I would like to mention, when we resubmitted these, we did request a waiver from the requirement for a 5-foot landscape buffer around the perimeter of the parking lot, since really where the new spaces are at, it is up against that dense, mature growth there, and we are using that area as our stormwater management. The existing plan does have, kind of in the northwest corner, there's an infiltration basin there, as well as kind of at the off to the east of the building. The one at the east of the building doesn't change. As the driveway moves westward like that, we are kind of recreating what is in place for managing that stormwater. It stays on site and infiltrates. The soils up there are pretty sandy, so that works well for that purpose.
Where are the, thank you very much, where are the entrances to this property as far as main entrances for visitors to come? If you know where you're going and your person that you're visiting is on the back of the property all the way around in the back corner, do they come in through everybody come in through the front door?
Yes, right where it kind of circles
Circle in the
underneath,
front.
there's a canopy there, and that's where the main entrance to the facility is.
Okay, any questions of the applicant? Any member of the audience wish to address any issues addressed here in by the applicant? Sorry, geez, struggling with that. Beth, you had a question.
I just wanted to address something that Mark just said about the waiver for the landscaping, and I'm sorry I didn't follow up with you on that one. In the original, the determination of completeness memo, we had requested additional shrub plantings on the perimeter buffer. The ordinance is sort of not very clear, which is something we're hoping to fix, where it says there should be a mixture of shrubs, trees, and ground covers around the perimeter of the parking lot. And in their request for the waiver, which would have been a variance change if they got rid of it, but it was more, I think, us to look at it again. And he brought up good points about the existing vegetation, where that ordinance is more to provide screening from the parking to adjacent residences or adjacent properties. There's sufficient existing plantings out there. So I didn't think that a waiver would be appropriate in this situation. And just looking at the landscape plan as it exists, there's sufficient, they had close spacing on the trees in the parking lot, so they provided a lot of vegetation. So I didn't address it, and I should have, but I think we've looked at it again, and we think we're okay with the landscaping.
Okay.
Do you have
Yes, Carol?
no, you have someone in the audience.
Oh, yes, come on up. Just step back. Sure. Thank you.
I don't even know, my name is Pat Wallace. I don't even know if you still had any questions about the reduced number of parking spaces.
I was going to ask that.
Okay, I live in senior housing,
Yep.
which is independent senior housing,
Mhm.
and have been amazed to discover what a small percentage of the residents maintain their own cars.
Sure, most of the parking's for visitors, right?
Well, most of the parking is empty most of the time, unless the dance school is meeting.
Yep.
So if that is still a concern, I just wanted to add that.
Great, thank you very much for that.
You want to just sign in?
Yeah, could you just sign in? I'm sorry, Mrs. Wallace, could you just sign in there? Sorry. You got to speak, you got to make it official if you're going to speak.
Okay.
She'll never
Come on
speak
back
again.
up, Mark.
Well, yeah, I do hope to speak again.
Yes, you do.
Good.
Everybody encourage it.
Come back, we always want to have you come back and speak. That's very helpful, though, thank you.
I have applied for your alternate opening.
Oh,
so
good.
I wanted you to know I really do care about
Oh,
this
good.
stuff.
Oh, you were here last month, too, weren't you?
Yes, I remember.
You were here last month, right? Great. Okay, so there was, Mark, there was questions regarding the parking. That was one of the things, and I don't know if any member of the board had any questions regarding the parking. I didn't have an issue with that, so I don't think there was a problem on our end. So
The
let's.
facility does provide a transportation service
Sure.
too for the residents who
People
live
to
there.
visit. Yes.
So in ADR, one of the members was actually concerned that there's too much parking. And so if you actually, I think she was saying, hey, if you really don't need this much, can you even scale it back a little bit more to reduce the impervious? So is this amount of parking an amount that they felt that they really, really needed, or were they sort of just trying to put as much as?
Well, we were really trying to come close to meeting the ordinance,
Okay.
where we added one for each new residence. But we can certainly revisit that.
Yeah, I
and
think the
scale that.
message-
It would be easy to scale that back.
Yeah, I think the message was less is, you've got the CUP, we're approving because we recognize that you can provide the parking if it is in fact needed, but we're not looking for you to provide as much as possible.
Yeah.
It's more like meet the need that you have. So if it's less parking, then why pay for the paving?
You got to take a note of this, because this doesn't happen very often. So.
But, Mr. Chairman, may I say that I think it's refreshing to have this
Absolutely.
conversation because,
Absolutely.
I get concerned that there's too much rote adherence to some of, our ordinances when
Yep.
in fact a little bit of in the light of day, clear, perspective on this might say, as in this case, we really don't need all that more.
Right.
I'd like to see us use our judgment a little bit more than.
I'll bet some of those smart architects at H.L. Turner could come up with some alternatives.
I
Maybe
bet.
open space, so if people wanted to park in an area, it was not particularly paved, but it was open, so we'll let you guys work on that, but we'll, I don't know how we do that with an approval, though, we can't give them carte blanche just to take away spots, but,
We could just say that with the condition that they would be able to submit a revised plan showing less parking.
so if you came
We'd be
back and
fine
said,
with
hey,
that.
we want to take out 4 or take out 6 spots, we'll give you the approval to work with staff to do that.
Okay, that's fair.
Yes, Carol?
Well, I don't know, I've never seen that lot anywhere near full, and I guess if the existing capacity is never used or approached, as long as they have showed the potential for creating these spaces, do they need to construct any more at all with this addition? So I just want to make that clear.
Okay.
How many spots are being added?
18.
18 new spots.
Mhm.
Scratch it.
Scratch it all together?
Yeah. Yeah.
So give you the ability to leave existing spots. And again, I'm conscious of the fact that, could you park around the road area that goes around it? People just pull off on the side and park there. If you want to park, you're going to park somewhere. So it's, yes.
I think our perspective from staff is we want them to meet what they think is their need. So if they feel they need 5 more spaces, build
yeah.
5 more spaces. I don't know if we want to say prevent them from building spaces
No.
they think that they might need.
So
but-
if we grant approval with no spaces and they build more, so would we grant approval and say, we're not going to make you put 18 spaces in at all? We're going to grant the approval with no additional parking being added to the plan. You can add parking without our approval, is that right?
I would really just keep it very simple and just say recommend approval subject to a reduction in parking as needed by the applicant.
And cleared with staff.
Correct.
Suzanne?
So it's not clear to me, but if people are living in those units, do they access them from the outside of the building there, or do they go in through the main?
No, there's central corridor through that.
So they wouldn't, so even those people parking there would have to walk all the way around to the front
Yes.
to get in, so it's not
Well,
like
there
it's-
may be some other entrances for residents, visitors come in through that main entrance, but these wings of the building have, other exits out through them. A resident could conceivably go in through that way and not have to go through
Well,
the
that,
main
I guess
lobby.
that I was asking, because if someone actually did have a car and lived in one of the units, it might be more convenient to have some parking there.
Back. Other
For the
areas.
convenience factor for them getting in and out, rather than in the front,
Mhm.
which would be,
I mean, that's something we can coordinate with the
yeah.
the Whitaker Place as well, and see what best meets their needs.
What's convenient, what's safe, and what's needed.
Right. And even if they needed some around in the back, that's not to say they couldn't be added there, and then some of them in the middle of the curve on that driveway.
Well, there's some appeal
Went
too in
away.
keeping it all in one place and then keeping the back kind of natural. You got some walking trails around there. You might not want to have cars in those areas as well. So I think I'd like to take Heather's advice and leave it to you guys working with staff to come up with what you feel is the right amount of parking, if that's okay with the board.
Yeah, we'll find out exactly how the residents use this as well, so.
Okay. All right, so that brings us to, we'll close our public hearing unless anybody else has a question. I don't see anybody out there raising their hand, so we will close the public hearing section of this. You can stay there if you'd like, Mark, just in case we got a question for you.
Okay.
Where's my report? Is that my report? No, yeah, that's my report. Okay, so help me out here, Heather. So we're going to item 3, which is recommendation. So we've got item 3.1 to grant ADR approval for the proposed site plan and building elevations as submitted. Somebody like to make a motion to grant ADR approval as outlined?
I move that we grant ADR approval as outlined.
So 3.1 granted and motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. 3.2 is to grant a conditional use permit per Article 28-7-11B of the ZO to allow for the construction of 59 parking spaces where 72 spaces are required. And again, with the condition that you'll work with staff to reduce that even further. Our recommendation. Somebody like to make a motion to grant that conditional use permit as outlined?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Item 3.3, to grant major site plan approval for the proposed commercial development subject to the following precedent and subsequent conditions as outlined. Precedent conditions 1 and 2 and subsequent conditions 1 through 4. Nothing changes in there regarding, you mentioned the landscape.
No, because that wasn't even addressed.
Okay.
It's all good.
Okay, so if someone would like to make a motion to grant major site plan approval on 3.3,
So moved.
that motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries. You're all set. Thank you very much. Good luck with that.
All right,
Looks like a
thank
nice
you very
project.
much.
Okay, that gets us through item 6C, brings us, 6D again has been removed from the agenda for tonight's meeting and will be renoticed. Brings us to item 7, amendments and other items. 7A, if we could read that into the record, Madam Clerk.
Item 7A is Article 29.2 of the Public Capital Facilities Impact Fee Ordinance, Section 29.2-1-2B, computation of the amount of the impact fee. This is an update of the variable unit fee for the transportation recreational facilities in accordance with the annual inflationary rate. So every year...
I thought we got rid of all impact fees. No?
So, yeah, every year we bring you the rate as adjusted for inflation based on when the very last inflationary adjustment was made. Council amended the ordinance to grant an automatic waiver for non-residential transportation impact fees. They did not remove them from the ordinance in the event that at some point in the future they may want to reinstate them. So our recommendation, so in updating the fees, we need to update them all. So really the only fees that are active now without the automatic waiver are transportation and recreation impact fees for residential development. However, as I noted, we're making the inflationary adjustment for all the fees, just so we can keep it consistent in the event at some point in the future council decides that they want to reinstate those non-residential fees. So staff is recommending that we keep pace with inflation. The figures in here, I believe, let's see, when was the last time it was, I think the last time it was updated, I'm not seeing it in here, July 2014. So basically from July 2014 to July 2017, it's an 8.38% increase in the rate of inflation for the transportation impact fees and a 4.25% increase for the recreation facility impact fees.
Okay. Any comments from the board? No? And again, I know the penchant for increased fees on anything is fairly tight, so this is, again, just so we're clear, this is a recommendation to council for a slight increase in the fees that are currently being collected. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and can we just look at I see the amendment that's written here. So table 2 is struck through under section 1. Table 2 is open for recreational facilities, impact fee per variable unit. Table 3 under section 2 is struck through, and then there's a new table 3. So that new table 3 is the new fee. Is that what we're proposing?
Correct.
So just first one that's there, single family residential use, $2,287 is the recommended change, up from $2,110, right? Okay. And that's a percentage increase, what'd you say?
3.8, was it?
3.8, is that?
Nope.
No, or
8.3.
8.3, well, I had the
3.8, 8.3.
Just order was.
Okay. Would we like to, do you need to make a motion for this? No, there's a public hearing as well in this?
Correct.
Okay, so let's open the public hearing and ask any member of the audience if they'd like to address this application. Nobody would like to address it, so we will close the public hearing. Any other comments from staff or questions from the board? Would someone like to make a motion to, hold on just a second, let me get back to this. So would someone like to make a motion to recommend to City Council that the amendment of impact fees for 29.2 public capital facilities impact fee ordinance to reflect the adjusted schedule as outlined on the amendment? If someone would like to make a motion.
Second.
That motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
2 noes?
2 noes.
2 noes. For the record, 2 noes. Matt and Teresa, I'm also going to vote no, if that makes a difference on that. So that's 3 to 3. What does that mean?
Fails.
Do you want to have discussion?
Do not-
4 to
7
3.
people. Why is it 3 to
No.
3?
4 to 3.
It's 4 to 3.
Oh, sorry.
3, 4.
4 to 3, approved.
Right.
So that motion carries, right?
Yes.
4 to 3, that motion carries. Okay. So that's 7A. Let's talk about 7B if we could. Read that, run into the record.
7B is an amendment to the Code of Ordinances, Title IV Zoning Code, Chapter 28, Zoning Ordinance, Article 28-6, Sign Regulations, proposing to prohibit internally illuminated signs in the Central Business Performance District, reduce the distance of sign projection permitted into the right-of-way to 5 feet, and reduce the square footage permitted for projecting signs to 15 square feet. Would you like to give me a summary?
I would like you to do that, please.
So these recommendations arose out of the discussions regarding design guidelines and also out of evaluating a review of certain sign applications that the board had denied due to viewing them as inappropriate for the character of Main Street and the new Main Street out of scale with the streetscape and just overall not really seeming consistent with what we'd like along the Main Street. So the report notes that there have been many more applications for internally illuminated signs on Main Street that weren't there before. I don't know the exact figure. So this amendment proposes essentially to add Main Street or the Central Business Performance District rather, to the list of districts where internally illuminated signs are not permitted. So currently, they're not permitted in the civic performance, in the institutional, in the urban transitional, or in any residential district. So this would be adding the CBP to that list where internally illuminated signs are not permitted. There was a feeling generally that the overhead directional lights were more appropriate. The internally illuminated signs are just projecting sort of out in every direction and just kind of making a sky glow. Well, they do make a sky glow because they project in every direction. They also are not focused on the building. They sort of shine out onto the people or to the street, and they don't, whereas the directional lights can be cut off and they can be directed towards the building, the entrance, the storefront. So there are a number of advantages, particularly in terms of the Main Street streetscape, why those positioned lights are preferable to the internally illuminated, which just sort of send light out everywhere. So that was one of the proposals.
So just those of you guys, if you haven't seen it, just open up the one that says sign survey in your packet. That will give you a visual into the recommendation to change the square footage permitted for signs. Now, I'm not 100% sure that everything on here is accurate as far as the way some of these round and oblong signs are being measured, but the survey of various signs in the CBP now, that first one at 25 North Main Street is 3 feet by 5 feet. That's 15 square feet. That's what we're proposing, that new signage doesn't exceed that amount. And to me, that's an enormous sign for Main Street.
That's the way it struck me too.
And it just looks to be almost out of proportion. So as you scroll down through it, the next one down is 12 square feet, which is 43 inches by 39 inches. I think much more appropriate on the big side. The next one down is 18 square feet, and that's an internally illuminated kickboxing sign there, 3 feet by 6 feet. And then 20 square feet, 4 feet by 5 is just, again, is enormous. These are where they're a little dicey here. This one at 58 North Main Street is 4 feet by 2 feet, but that's 4 feet by 2 feet square. So that's probably not 8 square feet. And same with Orange Leaf. And then that.
Might be a typo. That might be more like 2 by 2.
Okay.
Because it just doesn't seem correct.
Doesn't look right, yeah.
Well, 4 by 2 is, this is a perfect circle, and 4 by 2 is a rectangle.
Right.
So.
Yes. And then the one at 76 North Main Street, which is a long-standing existing sign that we haven't been able to change out at 40 square feet, is just way out of scale and proportion. So when we had looked at this and talked about this last week, I had almost said, let's try to push it down towards the 12 square foot. And again, the Merrimack County Savings Bank sign at 12 square feet, and then the very one at the bottom is 13.5 square feet, but again, it's round, so I'm not 100% sure. So on our amendment now, we're removing it from, what is it now, 20 square feet? 24 square feet down to 15 square feet. So we're cutting it down by quite a bit. I'm actually thinking that we might even want to cut it down a little more, but go ahead.
Can I comment on? Okay, so first of all, the one application that was denied was because it projected too far. Right now, you're allowed 6 feet 7 inches into the right-of-way, which was at the height that the sign was at, seen as, I mean, it's basically just looming over the entire sidewalk, which didn't seem to be appropriate. So we didn't have, I'm jumping back a bit to the projection.
To 5 foot. Yep.
So we didn't seem to have accurate data for how much all of these signs projected. Otherwise, I would have given that to you in this little survey.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, less than near 7 feet seems more appropriate from what you're looking at here. I think that we had proposed 5 feet, which means 5 feet into the right-of-way, not necessarily the distance of the sign. So for instance, the very first sign is 5 by 3 feet. However, it seems to be probably projecting further than 5 feet into the right-of-way. So that might have been something that would limit the size of this sign if they weren't allowed to, they might have had to make the sign a foot shorter or so.
So there's a 2.5 foot bracket and then a 5 foot sign.
Right,
is what
exactly.
We're saying we don't want.
Exactly. So prohibiting it from encroaching so far might have made this sign smaller. So 5 feet was kind of a guess, I want to say, because we weren't sure what was really appropriate, but 5 feet certainly seemed more appropriate than close to 7 feet, which is what it is now.
And this came again, the Citizens Bank, who was here either last month or the month before, had an existing 6 foot sign, and we asked them to cut it back to 5 feet, and they did. They agreed to approve. But again, if you go and look at that 6 foot sign, it does just loom over you as you're standing under it. And if it was any taller, it would be just overbearing.
So 4 feet was another consideration, not allowing them to project more than 4 feet.
But then again, if you got to push it off, you don't want them cutting into the building to get rid of material pieces to put a sign up to make it 4 feet. So I think 5 feet is a good compromise from that perspective. I'm not 100% sure if the square footage number is a good number though.
Yeah. So with regard to that, just real quickly, if you go to the last page where you see
the surveys, the picture
last
ones?
page on the survey, you'll see Susanna's sewing. So the way that code measures is they make a box. So Susanna's sewing seems like a very lovely, intimately scaled sign that is appropriate. But since they make a box to measure it, it's over 12 feet. So for a lot of these square signs, I agree. I felt that 12 feet was more appropriate as well. But there are a few signs that actually seem quite small and very consistent with the streetscape. That because of the way we measure it with that box, they're going to exceed that 12 foot. So that's why I went with when I went for a proposal, thinking 15 feet, because it allows for these types of signs that are not square. So that combined with no more than 5 feet encroachment might give just enough flexibility for a larger sign that actually isn't really larger.
Right. So it might have more bracket around it, or pushed off the building a little bit more, or maybe a little bit more ornate, or give it some character.
Yeah, this one was just really, that Suzanne's sewing was given as an example to show, look, this is almost 14 feet, and yet it seems very appropriate.
Right, but then again, you look at the 12-foot one at Godwana, which is up a little farther there, the second page or third page in on the second page on your packet. that's only 12 square feet, and that looks enormous. So it's visually, I guess it's maybe some of it's how it's being measured, but you know, I guess it's sign dimensions. If we say, you know, the sign dimensions in totality don't exceed 15 square feet.
Yeah, it's a bit of a perspective thing too, because you'll see Gondwana is 12 square feet, but if you look at Metro PCS, it appears to be the same size, but that's actually a 20 square foot sign.
So I guess, again, coming back to some of the reasoning, it's more to give us some ability when somebody does come to us on the internally illuminated and the size, we want to be able to reference this as our guidelines. So, Matt?
Just two quick questions, just for informational purposes. The brackets that extend out farther than the signs, any regulations on those? So if you have a sign that goes out 5 feet and the bracket goes out another foot or two, nothing on that?
Yep.
I don't think so, no.
Okay. And the other, what about vertically oriented signs? Any applications for those coming in, and is there any thoughts on, you know, should be some restrictions on that? So if they can't go out as far, are they going to turn them in?
They can't exceed the lower level of the windows on the second floor.
Perfect.
So they're limited by that.
All right, thank you.
Zoning wise. Yes, sir.
Regarding, a question for staff, regarding internally illuminated signs, where does neon fall
Well,
in that?
in the design guidelines, we specifically call out that neon should be permitted. I think it's a different type. It's not the same as these kind of internally illuminated.
So what we do here will not have any impact on that?
Correct, but we should clarify with code because they're the ones that are interpreting. So if code would view that, then we need to add some language specifically saying that neon is exempted. And I think it might be, but I'll have to check.
I would hope that it would be. I would prefer that it would be.
The design guidelines.
So maybe some guidance back to say we'd like to look at next, once we address this, maybe task staff with looking at specifically the ordinance regarding neon signs and make sure that.
Interested in that,
as well. And I think there's a place for them.
I agree. I think there is a place for them.
And there's a place not to have them as well.
And there's a place not to have them. But I think that we need to provide the flexibility.
Yeah.
You know, so that we can make decisions based on what doesn't look good.
Okay. Teresa?
I just have if I'm understanding this correctly, if we do 15 square feet total and 5 feet into the right-of-way, then the first sign still is okay.
I don't think it would be because I think it projects further than 5 feet into the right of way.
You've got it 3 by 5.
Right. The sign is 3 by 5.
But not with the
But
bracket.
the sign is actually projecting more than.
So you're saying you're including the bracket?
I'm saying from the property line, which is most likely the building facade.
And I would guess that sign that hump on the top is not in the 3.5.
Yeah,
3 by 5. I don't think that sign is the size that it says that it is, because it's enormous.
Poor people walking below.
What?
Poor people walking below.
Oh, yeah.
Task somebody to look at that, right, John?
Get up there and saw the
Yes,
top
sir.
of it.
John?
What do you do with existing signs? Is this just going to
That's a
apply
problem, yeah.
prospectively to new signs? Does it change the sign? That would be the case.
Yeah, and that's like I said with the one at North Main, the Crazy Goat one there. It's been that same sign. All they do is keep changing the panels out. So until some structural changes happen, then we'll be able to then control the signage. We're out of luck. And again, internally illuminated, we've addressed that. And I do want to make sure that we note that is part of this. We're talking about the sign size, but internally illuminated, we've kind of made the decision that we don't want that style on Main Street. So that's part of this as well.
My second question is, what kind of outreach is done for the downtown community? I mean, I would think this is a big.
Well, it's not only because it doesn't affect them if they've got an existing sign. So when even though we change these ordinances, anybody that's out of compliance on the sign, unless they're technically out of compliance with their approval, then they're bigger than their approval, then they're not going to be affected by this at all.
When they come in for a new sign.
With a new sign or change to sign, yeah. And again, they could reface it without necessarily changing, which is the problem.
The grandfather.
Yeah. Right? I'm not speaking out of turn, right? Yep. Okay, so before us, we've got this recommendation to amend the zoning ordinance to prohibit internally illuminated signs in the Civic Performance District, CVP, reduce the distance of the sign projection permitted into the right-of-way to 5 feet. And I'd like to say, in that particular case, do we want to give it a little bit more beef there, Heather, to say reduce the distance of sign projection permitted into the right-of-way to 5 feet from the building envelope or from the building
Yeah, 5 feet
facade?
maybe from the property line.
From the property line, perfect, from the property, so 5 feet from the property line. That'll get away from any of the brackets that are going out too far to put it in, and it'll also, Matt, get away from any brackets that might be projecting out past the end, even though if they go past the 5 feet, I guess it would be. Yes?
Do we need to mention bracket somehow? Because when I think of sign,
So we
think of just the
So we could say reduce the
area.
distance of sign and brackets to project not more than 5 feet from building envelope or the building property line. Reduce the distance of the sign and bracket. Or,
Or I could just say
Right.
including
Including
brackets or
bracket,
any
yeah.
hardware used to install.
Reduce the
the sign.
distance of the sign, including bracket, to project not more than 5 feet, okay. And to reduce the square footage permitted to the, for projecting signs to 15 square feet. And we're okay with that. I think Heather did a good job explaining some of the oddities of circles and squares and some of the measurement aspects. So I guess this is a good start to this. If we do determine later on that it's not the right number, we can look at it and address it from there. So if someone would like to make a motion, is that our next step? We
Well-
closed our public hearing. Yes.
So if I would request, I'm glad that we had this discussion and that I understand the board's
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
feeling about this. I would
Yeah.
request that we
Yeah.
hold off on taking this to council because the city solicitor informed me that he also has some amendments to the sign ordinance that he's working on right now. And so he'd like to add, and that's really just more cleanup in response to changes in the state RSAs. So he has some changes to make us more compliant with the RSAs that we would maybe fold it all together and then send it to council.
So we've addressed this piece of it, and in my little packet here, Jim Kennedy's asked that we continue the public hearing to next month to allow him to make additional amendments to the sign ordinance in response to changes to the RSAs.
But I think it might be great to have a motion saying that the board supports this proposal for.
Okay, so if we make a motion to say that we're in support of the recommendations as outlined in staff's report, and will defer to next month for Mr. Kennedy's additional comments regarding RSA changes to the sign ordinance. Is that okay? All right.
So moved.
I don't have to repeat it. So that motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. So we will wait till next month to finish that piece of it. Brings us to item 8 in our agenda under other business, to reappoint ADR members. So architectural design review is up for reapproval from the board. Do we have any details on that, Heather?
Yep, Jay Doherty, Claude Gentiome, and Jennifer Sis, their appointments are up in this month, and so this would renew their membership on those committees for another 2 years, I believe.
It's a 3-year term.
3 years, for another 3 years.
I can check. It's either
It's
2
okay.
or 3 years.
Okay. So any questions regarding those applicants re-upping for another term? They want to re-up? Have we
Yep,
told them?
they're
Have we
in
told them?
favor.
Have we told them they're going to re-up?
No.
So if someone would like to make a motion
Make the
to
motion that we
grant-
reappoint.
reappoint ADR members. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Item 9, Main Street Guide Draft Review.
So yes, this is, I think has been going really well. I think we're at the point where everyone is pretty happy with where it's at right now. I've made further changes since you last saw it in response to some ADR members' comments. I believe the page that changed the most was probably you all made the recommendation that I change it to historic buildings, and that page, actually most of the pictures were changed and a lot of the text was changed in response to Liz Durfee-Hangion's advice and recommendations, because she knows far more about historic buildings than myself. So I was very grateful to her for her assistance with that. And we also added a reference to the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitations for facade renovations, because one of the concerns was, even on buildings where balconies may be able to be installed because they're out of the right-of-way, that the facade of the building not be damaged, and that they be required to comply with these guidelines that are from DHR, I believe, or the National Register of Historic Places has guidelines for facade renovations. So we added that in there in a link to that, so folks could see what types of changes are considered acceptable for facades to historic buildings. And then you'll see in the very last page, I added the Appendix A, the locations for public art. And page 17, I added item 17.5, which references the appendix and the fact that if you're utilizing any of those locations that have been identified for public art, you may need to relocate your private amenities. So there were a number of recommendations in this document that the board made, and I forgot to bring them. I had written them all out. There is roughly 5 to 7 regulatory changes that would fall under the city code, and 3 or 4 regulations that fall under the zoning and the site plan. So some of them actually were taken care of with the sign amendments that we took care of just now. So this is going to be presented to council in February, along with a report outlining those regulatory changes. But all of the language in here of shalls has been removed. So everywhere in this document it says should. So it's really a true guidelines in that sense that there are no more shalls. And then if council chooses that they want to accept or make some of those regulatory changes, such as, we made the recommendation that balconies not be permitted in the right-of-way. We made the recommendation that there be a 5 to 6 foot minimum clear zone. We made the recommendation that that picnic benches not be permitted as outdoor dining. So there were a number of things that in there, that sandwich boards be regulated through the code. And so they can choose what of those things they would like to make the regulatory changes, and we'll move forward from there. If any, we can fold the shalls back into this document, and if none, we'll just keep them as shoulds.
Okay. And I know we had extensive conversations regarding balconies and sandwich boards. Teresa?
I'm not going to talk about either. On page 9, if in fact council adopts what we just voted on with the signs, the square footage, and the right-of-way, Little River Oriental Rugs looks to me like it's out of compliance, so you might want to change the photo. And I don't know, I can't tell from this photo whether Bagel Works would be in compliance, but I'd say if this is a guide, you want to make sure all the photographs are consistent with what the city's doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good point. And that's Bagel Works is a great one to maybe press code a little bit on figuring out what the signage space, because again, you could have a sign that if that point came down even farther all the way down, I mean, you could really get kind of wonky with some of the signs. So again, if it's in a square envelope, we need to know that.
That's a great sign.
It is a great sign. I wouldn't want to, but I wouldn't want to.
That's why I kept it in.
I wouldn't want to squash them. I do want to recognize too, Councilor Champlin called a quick meeting with myself and Heather, some members from the Chamber of Commerce,
Creative
Concord Group regarding public art, and is a good drive within the city, and a lot of the people within the city that really want to push public art spaces, really get some structure around it, start to the point where we've got so many people wanting to put public art into the spaces that we're going to have a waiting list and fill all of the spots. If you look at the last couple pages there on your packet, that last page shows those starred items. That every one of those starred items has been designated as a public art space. So there's only a couple of them that we're using now. The intent is to really get a lot of interest and start putting some public art in these spaces. So Councilor Champlin, thank you very much for getting that ball rolling, and hopefully we can keep it going.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great connections.
Good job. So what do we need to do on this, Heather? Is there any other comments from the board regarding this? I think Heather recognize the fact that this took you a long time. I think it's a very, very well-done document. I think we're on the right track. And I think council will look at it and maybe have a couple questions, but it's certainly a great spot to jump off on, so
Yeah, so,
good job.
I was really just giving you an update and letting you know that I did plan on presenting to council in February. And the city solicitor's office has offered to draft the amendment to the code with regard to sandwich boards, outdoor dining, and so they're working on that, and I've asked them to provide us a draft before it goes out so we can see if it complies with all the conversations and discussion that we had. So hopefully either in February, perhaps, we might be able to have a draft of that, which would not be in the zoning code. It would be in the city code. But essentially, planning board is saying, hey, we're recommending this.
That's what it is. Okay. All right. So we don't need to do anything with that? You're good with that? So let's move on to the next item, which is item 10, form-based code update.
Yes, so if I recall last time I may have mentioned to you that the consultants were planning on being here the week of February 5th. That's firm. They'll be here the week of the February 5th. February 6th, I'm hoping to schedule a special meeting of the planning board. So I wanted to bring that up to you. I have about 12 to 14 stakeholder interviews to schedule, which includes city council, planning board, and the zoning board. So Tuesday, February 6th, I'm planning on doing ZBA at 5 o'clock, planning board at 6 o'clock, and council at 7 o'clock, with a special session for Rich and for Chairman Woodfin and the mayor prior to those meetings.
6th, good.
So if that is okay, I'm checking to make sure that's okay with you all. Please, please, please. There's a lot of planning going into scheduling 14
So
stakeholder
let's,
meetings.
if you can take it upon yourself to check your schedules, if not now, maybe tonight or tomorrow, and let Heather know tomorrow. Just an email directly back to her, just confirming that you are available late afternoon on the 6th. Is that right?
6 p.m.
6 p.m. on the 6th?
Yeah,
Or is
so
that-
that would be essentially,
everybody's- Go ahead.
that would essentially be the consultants from Code Studio basically doing like an interview with you all. And it would be a public, we would notice it as a public meeting, but it wouldn't necessarily have a
6 p.m.
a public comment period other than the conversation with the consultants.
February 6th.
February 6th,
So
yep.
so the 7th is when the kickoff meeting is planned, and that's a public meeting for everyone. And we were able to get this room. ZBA normally has this room, but they wanted to attend. Some of them wanted to attend the kickoff, so they pushed their meeting to Thursday so that we could have this room on Wednesday the 7th for the kickoff, and that is planned for 6 to 8 p.m. roughly. And that will be, hopefully we'll get the word out through maybe In Town Concord, through the city manager's newsletter, and hopefully we may get an article in the Concord Monitor about the process, and they can publicize the fact that that meeting's occurring also.
Great.
So I'm super excited.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Ready to roll. Get
Yes.
that going. Okay, any questions regarding that? Is everybody available on the 6th that you know of?
Yes.
Fair amount of us?
I
Okay.
get to attend both meetings, the
Yes.
planning board meeting
Yes,
and
you
the
do.
city council?
City
Yes, you
council
do.
meeting.
You get to attend both meetings and the kickoff.
Wow.
Just form.
Actually, anyone can
form-based
attend.
code all day.
They're all public meetings, so everyone can come to any of the meetings. And the consultants may really be thrilled if they were able to get ZBA, Planning Board, and Council in the same room, because they love that cross pollination, you know.
All right, let's hit item 11. I'm passing around some numbers that Heather's put together for you, which is, number 11 here on our agenda
have
is the master plan budget update. Do you have enough?
I think so. Yeah.
Share.
So I just wanted to briefly share with you the thought process that's going on right now with the CIP. We're having to put the numbers in for the CIP for the next 10 years. So 2019 is the second half of the form-based code project. That's that first category with the 100,000 in there. That's what we're proposing. We're proposing. So after the form-based code project, we're going to have to do update the master plan. So the numbers in there that are not in bold are basically the estimate of how we might be able to break up the various studies that are needed that would go into the update of the master plan. So we have a transportation plan, which was done in 2004. That's a pretty big chunk of like a lot of data and outreach and planning that went into formulating our transportation section of our master plan, which also was the basis for a lot of the transportation projects that ended up in the CIP, like Manchester and Loudon Road and Fisherville Road and all those projects. So that's a pretty important piece to get that updated. A lot of the projects that are in there have actually been accomplished, and so we need to go back in there and update that. Historic resources. Liz Hengen had suggested that it would be really vital to get a consultant to update that chapter. So hopefully we'll be able to do something like that. We are proposing looking at having an energy and sustainability chapter. So we're staggering these so that it's not all in one big lump. But that would be kind of more of a comprehensive look at sustainability and sort of broadening the chapter that we do have, and maybe also looking more focused at some issues that we're experiencing in Concord that are just not addressed anywhere in our master plan or our ordinance, such as solar. Also, can you remind me what is Rob Warner's, what their document is called that they just are proposing?
I'm not sure what it's called, but it's a program that the Energy and Environment Advisory Committee is going to be presenting to council next month, and it's to have the city of Concord, as an entity, as well as residents, be 100% renewable energy by 2050. And it's a plan they've been working on.
Wow.
So in support of their goal, coordinating with them to sort of develop some, maybe, take to the next step.
Yeah, some groundwork.
So coordinating with them.
So energy and sustainability, is that a section in our master plan now?
We do have an energy section. It was done rather late. I think it was done in like 2013.
So coal burning and...
No, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good section, actually. But
things have changed.
Right. It was 2012 mostly that it was drafted. Okay. And that's I think key, that we really want to have coordinate with other departments on this. So the next piece, economic and demographic study, would be coordinating with our new economic development director and looking at what the needs are in terms of changing demographics and different market stuff that we might need, like more of kind of a targeted study to look at how to implement some of our goals. So essentially what comes out of the whole public outreach process and what information do we need. Looking more targeted, I think, is the key, because our current master plan has just a very broad examples of demographics, looking at all kinds of different numbers, and it's a little overwhelming. So I think we're hoping to get more of a targeted, useful approach to specific goals that we may have for economic development moving forward. So then the outreach and document production, that's really the primary consultants that would be doing the vision planning and also putting the document together.
The master plan.
Right. Okay. So those are the big ticket items spread up over 2 years. So this is kind of like just the plan, how we might see this moving forward. That we.
You guys don't want to do that in your spare time at night?
What do you think I've been thinking about for the past week?
Ask a question before we go too far, Carol.
Where does natural resources inventory fit into all this?
It's already been done.
That was just completed this year.
Okay.
That was the open space plan update.
I have two questions. One is, in 2008, the city authorized a creative economy task force to look at a plan for fostering and leveraging the creative economy for economic development. And part of that, the reason that City Council authorized that was at the urging of the Economic Development Advisory Council at the time, was because that was not a component of our master plan. So I would be concerned that we do address the creative economy, because it is an ongoing aspect of not only our quality of life, but it is, as to the extent that our quality of life has an impact on economic development, but also is an economic driver itself, with millions of dollars per year, in economic benefit to the city. So it's possible that would logically fall under our economic and demographic section here, as opposed to having its own section. But I would not want us to forget that. The other question I have is, You know, I see the, I see the historic resources section here, and I see the historic survey that's scheduled for 2024.
It's kind of a lump figure for projects that may come
Yeah,
along.
one of the things that I think that I'm been very concerned about is that I don't know that we have identified those structures which we consider to be integral to the historic fabric, to the architectural fabric of the city, that we should make an extra special effort to preserve. You know, I think that, you know, people have talked to me a number of times about expressing concern about the number of tear downs we've had. Not every building that we've torn down has been of prime historical importance. But you know, I would like to see at some point, whether it's part of the master plan or otherwise, that we actually identify those buildings that we think are important to preserve and create a formal list, and also have a strategy as to how do we deal with, how do we preserve those buildings, particularly since most of them are privately owned structures.
Right.
Good points.
Is that historic surveys, is that what we're talking about here? Is that what Byron's mentioning?
Well, so we have a heritage trust, and we're also a certified local government, which gives us access to CLG grants. And so there's a number of different funding ways that things can be funded. And so I think we always try to keep a figure in there to cover projects that we might want to do moving forward. So that's really, it could be anything that those funding sources will cover.
I think that's a Heritage Commission thing too. Maybe we can talk to the Heritage Commission and bring that up.
I was just about to say, I didn't mean to preempt the Heritage Commission, but
I think that probably is. We've got some new members of the Heritage Commission. We'll have a new chair and a couple of new members that I think would be very interested in maybe taking this on and seeing what they can get rolling.
I'd prefer not to wait till 2024. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's an immediate need to
get it started. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So,
I'm happy to work with you on that.
Yep,
I know, Mr. Chairman, that you sit on the Heritage Commission.
Yep.
That might be a more appropriate conversation to have during the master plan update. So that's more immediate.
Yeah.
But
to identify studies so we can scope them.
It almost might be something we can do separately as well and get tracked a little bit quicker. Okay.
Thank you.
Good point. All right.
So I just wanted to show you how the master plan was kind of.
And you sure you don't want to do it? You and Beth, I think you.
Well, we'll be doing it.
I know
we'll be doing plenty.
Okay, so that's a quick update on that. And any questions for the staff on that? Looks pretty good.
Yeah, I just wanted to share with you my thinking on how that, since part of the purview of the planning board is the master plan and developing and approving the master plan. And so I just wanted you to be aware moving forward in the next few years what we'll be looking at.
It's good guidelines for maybe when you want to jump off the board in 2020. It looks like. I know you were all thinking it. So.
And these numbers may change dramatically or radically depending on how council, what council does with them. So.
That brings us through the end of our agenda for this evening. Any other business that any member would like to bring before the board? If not, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you, staff. Good job.
I'm defending.